Emily Brooks left for her honeymoon with a husband who promised forever. 3 days later, Daniel Brooks stood alone at the front desk of a Caribbean resort, trembling, saying only, "I can't find my wife." Guests thought it was tragedy. A security guard remembered something else. A scream in the dark, cut short. What investigators found would unravel a perfect love story and reveal a truth too sharp to forget. Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Daniel Brooks was the kind of man people in their hometown called dependable. He worked steady hours as an electrician, mowed his mother's lawn every Saturday, and never missed Sunday service. Emily Brooks was the opposite in almost every way. Bright-eyed, impulsive, and drawn to beauty like it was oxygen. They'd met at a mutual friend's barbecue 3 years earlier. Daniel said it was her laugh that caught him. Emily told friends it was the way he seemed safe in a world full of risks. By the end of that summer, they were inseparable. Engagement followed the next year, and in early spring, a modest wedding under white fairy lights in the community hall. Their honeymoon was meant to be a week in a Caribbean paradise, the kind of trip neither had ever taken. But just 3 days in, Emily would vanish, leaving Daniel to return home with nothing but luggage and a story that didn't seem to fit together. Friends said the marriage had been too perfect to end in tragedy. Police weren't so sure. When they asked Daniel to recount his final morning with her, small details began to surface: the missed breakfast reservation, the late-night walk along the cliffs, the unanswered texts from her phone hours before she was reported missing. And then there was the sound the security guard swore he heard, echoing from the direction of their villa. A single scream, sharp and sudden, ending as if someone had covered her mouth. That scream would become the thread investigators couldn't stop pulling, because the more they pulled, the more the perfect picture of Daniel and Emily began to tear. The Caribbean resort where Daniel and Emily Brooks spent their honeymoon was the kind of place built for postcards. White sand, turquoise water, and palm trees, leaning like they had all the time in the world. Their villa sat on the far edge of the property, with a balcony overlooking cliffs that dropped straight into the sea. On their first day, staff remembered them laughing, clinking glasses by the pool, Daniel rubbing sunscreen onto Emily's shoulders. But by the third night, something shifted. A waitress at the open-air restaurant said Emily dined alone, her eyes fixed on the horizon, her plate barely touched. Daniel, she claimed, walked in 20 minutes later, tense, scanning the room before taking a seat across from her. No one heard what was said between them, but the silence was heavy enough to notice. Later that night, the resort's night clerk saw Daniel leaving the villa barefoot, carrying a pair of women's sandals, heading toward the cliffs. Hours later, before sunrise, the security guard heard that scream, sharp, startled, then gone. By the time the sun rose, Daniel was at the front desk, saying only, "I can't find my wife." It was the start of a timeline investigators would pick apart minute by minute, searching for the moment paradise turned into a crime scene. Local police began with polite questions, but from the start, Daniel Brooks seemed rehearsed. He told them Emily had woken early, gone for a walk along the beach, and never returned. Yet, when officers checked the sand that morning, there were no footprints leading from their villa toward the shoreline, only a trail heading to the cliffs. Inside the villa, they noticed something odd. Emily's passport and wallet were on the dresser, her phone on the nightstand, screen dark but smudged with fingerprints that didn't match Daniel or Emily. A resort staff member quietly mentioned seeing the couple argue on their balcony the night before. When asked about it, Daniel smiled faintly and said they were just talking about plans. The more they pressed, the more cracks appeared. Surveillance footage from the resort's side path showed Daniel alone, near the cliffs, at 3:12 a.m., the same path the security guard pointed to when describing the direction of the scream. Detectives began to suspect they weren't dealing with a disappearance, but a cover-up. And the first piece of physical evidence, a torn strip of fabric caught on a jagged rock below the cliff edge, was about to change everything. 2 days after Emily Brooks was reported missing, divers were sent to search the waters below the cliff near the resort. The tide was strong, visibility low, but on the third dive they found her, wedged between rocks, clothing torn, a deep bruise along her temple. The medical examiner's preliminary report ruled out drowning. Emily had been alive when she hit the water, but her injuries suggested a violent shove rather than an accidental fall. Detectives brought Daniel Brooks into the station, presenting the timeline. The late-night balcony argument, his barefoot walk toward the cliffs, the scream, and the strip of fabric matching Emily's dress. Daniel insisted he was searching for her after she wandered off, but when shown the resort footage placing him at the cliff edge hours earlier, he fell silent. Investigators also uncovered a life insurance policy taken out in Emily's name 2 months before the wedding, with Daniel as the sole beneficiary. The amount? $500,000. As the evidence mounted, Daniel's version of events grew shorter, until his only answer was that he loved her and would never hurt her. But in the prosecutor's eyes, love and money had just become the motive, and the next stop for Daniel Brooks would be a courtroom where the truth could no longer be postponed. The trial of Daniel Brooks drew more attention than anyone in his quiet hometown could have imagined. Prosecutors painted him as a man who married Emily Brooks not for love, but for the payout her death would bring. They showed the jury the resort footage, the life insurance documents, and expert testimony that Emily's injuries were consistent with a forceful push. The defense countered with a different story, that Emily had been restless, that she wandered near the cliffs after an argument, and that the scream was his own when he realized she'd fallen. For weeks, witnesses took the stand. The security guard repeated his memory of that sharp, sudden scream. The waitress recalled the tense dinner. Then came the moment that silenced the room. A handwriting expert confirmed that the insurance application bore Daniel's signature on both his own and Emily's lines, proof she had never agreed to it. The jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning with a verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. As the sentence was read, life without parole, Daniel stared straight ahead, unblinking. In the gallery, Emily's parents held each other, tears in their eyes, knowing the fight for the truth had ended. But for many watching, the question lingered. Was this justice for Emily, or the closing of a story that still held pieces no one would ever find? Emily Brooks left home as a newlywed chasing a dream and returned in the silence of a coffin. Daniel Brooks began that week as a husband in the glow of a honeymoon and ended it in chains, a jury's verdict sealing his fate. On paper, the case was over. The evidence weighed, the sentence passed. But the ripples of what happened on that cliff in the Caribbean would stretch far beyond the courtroom. Friends who once called Daniel a steady, dependable man now questioned everything they thought they knew. Emily's parents clung to the memories of her laughter, her quick wit, and the plans she never got to see through. The cliff remains there, waves still breaking against its base, as if the island itself has moved on. But for those who loved her, time stopped the moment her voice was silenced. What do you think really happened that morning between Daniel and Emily Brooks? Was justice served? Or is there more to the story than anyone will ever know? Before we go deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos.